I'm going to make you a promise that sounds impossible. In the next few minutes, your brain is going to upgrade. Not gradually, not theoretically, but measurably and permanently. Each technique I'm about to show you adds roughly 30% to your mental processing power. By the time you reach the end of this video, you won't just think differently, you'll think like a grandmaster. Like someone who sees 10 moves ahead while others are still processing move 1. But here's what you need to understand before we begin. Once your brain learns to operate at this level, there's no downgrade option. You can't unsee what you're about to learn to see. Your mind will become sharper, faster, more ruthless in its analysis, and some of the comfortable illusions you've been living with will shatter permanently. If you're ready to think at a level that most people will never access, then pay attention to every word that follows. Right now, your brain is running on default settings, factory programming designed for survival in a world that no longer exists. You're using mental software from 10,000 years ago to navigate situations that require surgical precision and strategic depth. And that gap between your current operating system and what's actually required is costing you every single day. Opportunities you don't see, threats you don't recognize, manipulations you don't detect until it's too late. Machiavelli understood something that modern neuroscience is only now confirming. The human brain is not fixed. It's adaptable, upgradable, capable of accessing levels of processing that most people never touch. But you have to know which switches to flip, which circuits to activate, which mental muscles to develop. That's exactly what these 10 hacks do. They're activation protocols, mental techniques that, once learned, become automatic. Write this in the comments right now. My mind is upgrading. Because that simple statement is your commitment to the transformation that's about to happen. You're not just watching a video, you're installing new cognitive software. Let's start with mental hack number 1, micro-expression reading. Every human being leaks their true emotional state through facial expressions that last between 1/15th and 1/25th of a second. These micro-expressions bypass conscious control. They're neurological reflexes, which means they're truthful in ways that words can never be. Someone can tell you they're fine while their face flashes contempt for a fraction of a second. Most people never see these signals because they're not looking for them and they happen too fast for untrained perception. But here's the upgrade. Your brain already processes these micro-expressions at a subconscious level. That's why you sometimes feel like something is off about a person even though you can't articulate why. The hack is bringing that unconscious processing into conscious awareness. Start by watching people's faces when they first see you, before they have time to compose their expression. Practice this everywhere. In meetings, in conversations, while watching videos of people speaking. Within 2 weeks, your brain will start catching these signals automatically. You'll know when someone is lying, not because you're paranoid, but because their face told you the truth before their mouth finished the lie. This single skill adds 30% to your social intelligence because you're now reading 2 channels simultaneously. Mental hack number 2, probabilistic thinking. Most people think in certainties. This will work, that won't happen. They're trustworthy. But reality doesn't operate in certainties. It operates in probabilities. Everything exists on a spectrum from impossible to inevitable, and your job is to assess where any given outcome sits on that spectrum. Machiavelli made decisions by weighing probabilities, not by hoping for certainties. Here's how you install this upgrade. Stop thinking in binary terms. Instead of asking, "Will this work?" ask, What's the probability this works? And what's my plan for each probability range? If there's a 70% chance of success, what's my strategy for the 30% failure scenario? This transforms you from a reactive thinker to a strategic operator. You're not blindsided when low probability events occur because you already gamed them out. Start applying this to every decision for the next 7 days. What's the probability of each possible outcome? What's my response to each probability bracket? Your brain will resist at first because probabilistic thinking requires more cognitive effort than binary certainty. But once this becomes automatic, you'll make dramatically better decisions because you're working with accurate models of reality. Mental hack number 3, negative visualization. This is one of the most powerful cognitive tools ever developed, and it comes from Stoic philosophy, but Machiavelli used it ruthlessly. Before any important event, meeting, or situation, you visualize everything going wrong. Not to make yourself anxious, but to prepare your brain for possible threats and to remove the paralyzing power of worst-case scenarios. When you pre-experience loss, betrayal, failure, or disaster in your imagination, 2 things happen. First, you identify vulnerabilities and risks you would have missed with pure positive thinking. Second, you inoculate yourself against the emotional devastation of negative outcomes. Most people avoid thinking about bad possibilities because it feels uncomfortable, but that avoidance leaves you psychologically brittle. Negative visualization removes that surprise factor. You already processed this possibility, so when it happens in reality, you're not frozen. You're executing the contingency plan you created during your visualization. Here's the protocol. Before any significant interaction, spend 2 minutes visualizing the worst probable outcome. Feel it. Experience the disappointment, the frustration, the loss. Then ask yourself what you would do in that situation. Now you're prepared for both success and failure. This is how you become mentally ruthless. Mental hack number 4, cold reading. This is a technique that mentalists use, but when you strip away the mysticism, it's just advanced pattern recognition applied to human behavior. Cold reading means making highly accurate assessments about people based on minimal information. You observe their clothing, their word choices, their body language, their reaction patterns, and you build a psychological profile in real time. Every detail is data. Most people ignore this information because they've been taught it's judgmental. But you're not judging, you're collecting intelligence. And that intelligence allows you to predict behavior, understand motivations, and navigate interactions with precision. Machiavelli was a master cold reader. He could assess a person's reliability, ambition, and loyalty within minutes because he was reading hundreds of microsignals that others ignored. Start practicing this immediately. When you meet someone new, observe everything about them. What do their clothing choices signal? What does their posture reveal about their confidence level? What topics do they gravitate toward? Listen not just to their words, but to their speech patterns. Do they speak with certainty or with hedging language? Within 5 minutes of conscious observation, you'll know more about a person than most people learn in months of casual interaction. Mental hack number 5, strategic detachment. This is the ability to observe situations, including situations you're emotionally invested in, as if you're watching from outside. Most people are trapped inside their emotional reactions. Something happens, and they immediately feel fear, anger, hope, or excitement. Those emotions then drive their decisions, usually poorly. Strategic detachment means creating a gap between stimulus and response. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about being like a fox. Foxes are calculating. They assess situations for what they are, not for what they wish them to be. When you develop strategic detachment, you can be in the middle of a crisis and still think clearly. Emotions are information, not instructions. You feel them, you acknowledge them, but you don't obey them. Here's how you build this capacity. The next time something triggers an emotional reaction in you, pause before you respond. Even just 3 seconds. In that pause, observe yourself. Notice the emotion. Name it. Then ask yourself what a completely detached observer would recommend in this situation. Practice this daily, and within weeks, you'll notice that your emotions stop controlling your behavior. They inform you, but they don't run you. Mental hack number 6, mental simulation. Before any important interaction, conversation, negotiation, or decision point, you run simulations in your mind. You game out different scenarios. If I say this, they'll probably respond like this, which means I should be ready with this counter. Champions in every field use mental simulation. Athletes visualize their performance. Chess players simulate games in their mind. Military strategists wargame different scenarios. Machiavelli simulated constantly. Before giving advice to princes, he would mentally simulate how different courses of action would play out given human nature, given the political environment, given the incentives of various actors. This is why his advice was so accurate. He wasn't guessing. He was running sophisticated mental models. Before your next important meeting, close your eyes and simulate it. See the room, the people, the dynamic. Run through different conversational paths. Where might they push back? What might they want? How might they try to position their interests? This preparation makes you unshakable in the actual interaction because nothing surprises you. You already experienced 15 versions of this conversation in your mind. Mental hack number 7. Socratic questioning. This is the art of asking questions that expose flaws in reasoning, reveal hidden assumptions, and get to foundational truth. Most people accept statements at face value, but sophisticated thinkers use questions as scalpels. They cut through surface assertions to examine the underlying logic. Socratic questioning asks, "What do you mean by that? What evidence supports that claim? What would have to be true for that to be false?" These questions force both you and the other person to examine beliefs more carefully. Often you'll discover that positions that seemed solid are actually built on assumptions that don't hold up to scrutiny. This works on your own thinking too. When you catch yourself believing something strongly, ask yourself Socratic questions. Why do I believe this? What evidence do I actually have? Machiavelli was a master of this technique. He questioned every conventional wisdom of his era. His entire philosophy emerged from asking better questions than anyone else was asking. Install this upgrade by making question asking your default mode. When someone makes a claim, don't immediately accept or reject it. Ask questions that probe the foundation of that claim. Mental hack number 8. Pattern recognition acceleration. Your brain is constantly looking for patterns, but most people's pattern recognition operates slowly and unconsciously. You need to accelerate it and make it conscious. This means actively looking for patterns in everything. How does this person behave when they're stressed versus comfortable? What happens every time before this situation goes wrong? When you train yourself to actively hunt for patterns, you start seeing the invisible architecture of reality. You notice that certain behaviors predict certain outcomes with high reliability. This makes you predictive. You're not reacting to events as they happen, you're anticipating events before they fully materialize because you recognize the pattern that precedes them. Machiavelli's entire method was pattern recognition applied to political history. He studied hundreds of examples of princes rising and falling and extracted the patterns that explained those outcomes. You can do this in your own life. Start keeping a mental file of patterns you observe. After 30 days of conscious pattern hunting, your brain will start doing this automatically. Mental hack number 9. Cognitive red teaming. This is a technique from military and intelligence operations. You deliberately try to disprove your own plans, beliefs, and strategies. You take the opposing side and attack your own position as aggressively as possible. Most people look for evidence that confirms what they already believe. This is called confirmation bias, and it makes you weak. Cognitive red teaming makes you strong because it exposes every vulnerability in your thinking before reality does. Before you commit to any significant decision, spend time actively trying to destroy your reasoning. What's the best argument against this plan? What am I not seeing? What assumptions am I making that might be wrong? Machiavelli red-teamed constantly. He would present a strategy and then immediately articulate why it might fail. This made his actual recommendations incredibly robust. Install this upgrade by never trusting your first conclusion. Always spend time trying to disprove it. If you can't disprove it after genuine effort, it's probably solid. This is how you develop ruthless thinking. Not by being aggressive toward others, but by being ruthlessly honest about your own reasoning. Mental hack number 10. Metacognitive awareness. This is thinking about your thinking. Most people think. Sophisticated people observe themselves thinking. They notice when their thinking is clear versus clouded. They recognize when emotions are distorting their analysis. They catch themselves making logical errors in real time and correct course. Metacognition is the highest level of mental operation because it allows you to debug your own mind. You're not trapped inside your thoughts. You're able to step back and evaluate them objectively. When you're in a conversation and you notice yourself getting defensive, metacognition alerts you that your ego is engaged and your thinking is compromised. When you're making a decision and you notice you're only considering evidence that supports what you want to do, metacognition catches that confirmation bias. Develop this by regularly asking yourself questions about your thinking process. Am I thinking clearly right now? What might be distorting my judgment? Am I being strategic or emotional? This internal observer becomes your greatest asset because it prevents you from being hijacked by your own cognitive biases. Now you have all 10 hacks: microexpression reading, probabilistic thinking, negative visualization, cold reading, strategic detachment, mental simulation, Socratic questioning, pattern recognition, cognitive red teaming, and metacognitive awareness. Each one adds roughly 30% to your mental processing power. Individually, they're powerful. Combined, they're transformational. Because they don't just add up, they multiply. Your brain is now equipped with tools that most people will never access. You can read people at levels they don't even read themselves. You can predict outcomes before others see them coming. You can think strategically while others react emotionally. This is what it means to think like a grandmaster. Not just one level deep, but 3, 5, 10 levels deep. But here's what you need to understand about this upgrade. Knowledge doesn't change anything. Application. Your brain is now equipped with tools that most people will never access. You can read people at levels they don't even read themselves. You can predict outcomes before others see them coming. You can think strategically while others react emotionally. This is what it means to think like a grandmaster, not just one level deep, but 3, 5, 10 levels deep. But here's what you need to understand about this upgrade. Knowledge doesn't change anything. Application changes everything. These 10 hacks are useless if they stay theoretical. You need to practice them, drill them, integrate them until they become automatic. Start with one hack per day. Tomorrow, focus exclusively on microexpression reading. The next day, probabilistic thinking. By day 10, you'll have practiced each hack individually. Then start combining them. Within 30 days of consistent practice, people will start noticing something different about you. They won't be able to articulate what it is, but they'll sense that you're processing at a different level. You'll be 3 moves ahead in conversations. You'll make connections others miss. You'll avoid traps others fall into. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote about the distinction between those who rule and those who are ruled. The difference isn't birth or luck or resources. It's cognitive sophistication. The rulers see more, think deeper, and act more strategically than those they rule, not because they're inherently superior, but because they developed their mental capacities while others left theirs dormant. Write this in the comments. My mind is operating at grandmaster level, because that statement is your declaration that you're not settling for default thinking anymore, that you're committing to cognitive excellence. The world is full of people operating at 30% mental capacity, wondering why they keep getting outmaneuvered, manipulated, and blindsided. You don't have to be one of them. Your brain is now upgraded. The software is installed. But software doesn't run itself. You have to execute it. Use these tools daily, apply them ruthlessly, sharpen them through practice, and watch as your mental processing power multiplies to levels you didn't know were possible. This is your transformation from ordinary thinker to strategic master. This is Machiavelli's mental upgrade. This is thinking at 300% capacity. This is what separates those who see from those who are blind. Welcome to the next level. Your mind will never be the same.